It's been almost a year since Marvel Rivals has come out, and both Rivals and Overwatch have changed drastically. They've changed drastically because of Marvel Rivals' release, honestly for the better across the board. I think Marvel Rivals is the breath of fresh air in the hero shooter genre that, especially post Overwatch 2, everyone really needed, and because of that game, it's shaken up things in the best way possible for the gamer at home. Today's video, we're gonna break down the state of Rivals versus Overwatch, the two kings of the hero shooter genre now, I think it's fair to say, and break down which game is quote-unquote better. What game has done better things compared to the other in the last 12 months since Rivals release. So I'm really excited to talk about today. Let's break it down. So let's start out with systems, right? I think that's the easiest thing to come out. I think Rivals really took Overwatch's systems and upgraded them across the board. Rivals had the first implementation of hero bans, which then caused Overwatch to release their system as well. I saw some discourse on Twitter, people trying to claim that Overwatch did not implement hero bans because of Rivals, and they were always planning to do them. Yes, they had 8 years to do it, and it was always on the radar, but they never really did. No, like Rivals definitely expedited their release of hero bans, and really, actually, I've got to give them credit, gave them a foundation to build a system on that was better. At this point in time, a year later, Overwatch's hero ban system is actually better than Marvel Rivals for one key reason: you can't duplicate ban. In a game like Rivals, where they have these very extreme designs, that's kind of what their kick is. It's like they want you to feel like a superhero when you're playing the game. Characters like Human Torch have been super strong for a while. Characters like Ultron Triple Support are very powerful, and so there's almost always a very egregious ban that you want to have in Rivals, and those bans tend to come out in duplicates very consistently. But what Overwatch did with their ban system that was so smart, and again, you'll have to forgive me, I don't know the exact details on how their ban system is designed or how it works, but I do know the result in that you can't duplicate ban. And that's very nice, because there's a lot of problematic characters in the meta that balance can't solve, but bans really help mitigate and allow players to curate their own experience. In Overwatch, you select 3 characters that you would like to ban, and I think it pulls 2 of the most picked characters from your team and make sure it's not a duplicate ban for the other team, ensuring that, hey, we're gonna have 4 bans in every lobby, not, hey, really, if somebody doesn't ban, which, you know, you can also not ban in Overwatch, but if you pick the same character, that character is not going to be dupe banned. And Overwatch actually looked at how great Rivals' hero ban system was, and hero bans in general just are for the genre and the game, and they said, okay, how can we actually make this better? In a way, the irony of this is, and this is why the consumer wins so much, is that Rivals iterated on Overwatch 1, and then Overwatch 2 iterated on Rivals. This is the best case scenario for everybody at home. And I've got to say, I think Overwatch's ban system about a year later is actually better than Marvel Rivals is, though Rivals was the first to implement it, and it clearly was loved so much. Rivals definitely needs to take a page out of Overwatch 2's book now, a year later, and make their ban system a lot better by berating duplicate bans and making sure that they can't actually come through, because it's just a waste of a ban slot, and it's not a great system. That needs to be improved on 100%. Now, a year later, you know, Overwatch 2 definitely was a more barren version of Overwatch 1, while Rivals continued to iterate on the format. And one of the best ways that Rivals iterated on the format was team-ups, right? Team-ups, you know, we first saw them in April or May of 2024. And I will say, after trying them out, everybody really loved them. I'm not going to say that this caused Overwatch to go test out perks, but I would say it definitely instilled confidence in them to go do it. Because again, I can't speak on that because I don't know. So Overwatch's response to team-ups and how fun they were essentially, if you pick in synergy with somebody else, you get an extra ability on a character. Like right now, Hulk Namor gets a Gamma Squid and a 3rd Squid, which makes him a much better anti-dive option against all of the dive characters in the game. Makes him significantly better. So you would be inclined to pick those 2 characters, and Namor essentially unlocks a new ability. Overwatch's response to this was the perks update in March of 2025. And I think the perks update was probably the best update that Overwatch has ever made to their game. And it really does, like, I don't want to say it justifies Overwatch 2, because you know, there really was no reason for Overwatch 2, but I will say, like, it lives up to a sequel. Like, it actually was a great update. It iterated on Overwatch 1, which is what you want a quote-unquote sequel to do, is to take the core game and actually iterate on it in a good way. I know some people aren't a fan of perks, but I'm a big fan of perks, and I will acknowledge some people when they say, well, Sam, it's just another unbalanced thing. It's like some perks are better than others, and one perk is always a must pick. And while that is the case, for example, you know, you always want to pick Mei's Blizzard heals allies and gives them speed or whatever perk over the jump up and get an ice wall perk, because the cooldown, the fact that when you jump up and get a little mini boost puts your wall on a 6-second cooldown instead of a 2 or 3 second cooldown. Yeah, that's definitely not worth it. And there's countless other examples of perks that probably need to get buffed or tuned or balanced, but just because they aren't perfectly balanced doesn't mean the concept is not a good idea that actually lets you iterate on your character and control your game experience a lot more. For example, Echo starting out with 50% of her duplicate in her ult charge when she duplicates is really good, and it allows you to copy way more characters. It's because you can actually build the ult fairly consistently. Or if you want the extra range on the beam to give you more range against hit scan characters, that is also something that you can do, which is one of the original nerfs that Echo received, was a beam length nerf, forcing her to get way closer with her engage. On top of that, you have the choice of the extra damage from the sticky bombs and having more sticky bombs on the major perk, or getting a flight reset cooldown if you get a kill with beam, letting Echo disengage and be way more of a neutral fight assassin, or have her play to her ultimate. Giving players the choice and having it directly be in their control is actually a better system than the team-ups are, because it's the same concept, except one is self-reliant and the other one is reliant on a team comp where your character could get banned that you need the team-up for. I like having that control over my character myself, and it's one of the most enjoyable things I've ever seen that's come out in Overwatch, and it really does kind of capture the thing that I always wanted personally from Overwatch 2, in that the Borderlands-esque PvE trees, which we could have a whole separate video talking about Borderlands 4. I am waiting to play it because of the optimization, and my buddies need to upgrade their PCs, and I want to play it with my buddies because we've been Borderlands fans for 10 years now. I love Borderlands. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see me talk about Borderlands 4 in a video. I'm still up on Borderlands 4. I'm still up, guys. I'm still up. You know, the optimization is going to get fixed. I'll upgrade my PC. Randy had some interesting comments. Come on, Randy. You got to be better than that, man. But yeah, no, we could talk about that. But Overwatch 2's perk system really did capture pretty much everything I wanted for PvP in Overwatch 2. Dude, the ability to really build and emphasize your own character, it's a really fun update. So anybody hating on perks, you know, I've got to give it to Overwatch. Their response to team-ups was great. It was actually about as good as it possibly could have been with the perks update on a nade bouncing, all the new nade rollouts you can do. It reinvented how to play every character in every season, and it's not dependent on whether or not you actually have a teammate that has to pick the right character. Really good, really surprised me. I didn't see it coming. Great update. I got to give it to Overwatch. I prefer perks over team-ups, and I hope that Rivals can actually take a page out of Overwatch's book and do something similar with perks, because that would be freaking sick if they were able to do something like that. Let's move it over to the competitive space. I've got to give it to Overwatch, guys. Overwatch has done a better job with maps the last year than NetEase has in their competitive mode for a couple of reasons. Number one, map pools suck in competitive. They sucked in Overwatch 2, and they suck even more in Rivals. And the reason why they suck even more in Rivals is that Rivals doesn't have the map variety yet in their game to justify map pools at all. And even with Overwatch's map variety, when Overwatch 2 came out and they tried map pools, it was also unfun. It makes the experience more repetitive. And for the same thing that I grilled Overwatch 2 about for years, I'm now going to grill Marvel Rivals and NetEase on. Less is not more, right? Anybody who tries to argue to you, oh, well, you get a better competitive experience because the map pool is more limited, therefore the game is more competitive. That's not true. A more repetitive game does not make the game more competitive, right? What makes a game competitive is a team's ability and willingness to play together. And now, while I will say Rivals has added a couple new maps that actually are pretty decent, you know, having map pools in the game when you have a very limited map volume is not a good or fun update. It makes the game more repetitive when that game already suffers from a heavy sustained gameplay loop that we'll talk about in a little bit. NetEase has not done a great job of addressing. They've been way too soft on it, and that is one of the downsides of OpenQ format, is that it's very easy Now, I wouldn't say it's open queue format. I would say more so they're very, very powerful and long duration ultimates in that game compared to Overwatch. Makes the game much more boring much more quickly because of how repetitive it is, right? That's not something Overwatch suffers from because they actually added map voting and expanded on all of their maps. They also had 10 years of maps to actually build off of. So I've got to give it to Overwatch again. Instead of doing map pools, they did map voting, which actually lets people choose and vote between 3 separate maps and curate your experience even more, man. I've got to say, I would love to see Rivals add map voting. They need to get rid of map pools first. I think that it really has hurt the competitive space by having map pools be in the game because those are the diehard players. Like, a more repetitive experience is not a more competitive experience. It's not actually a good thing. And taking away diversity is not more. It's not better. Less is not more. I grilled Overwatch 2 for that for multiple years, and I was right in my opinion. And now, Netties, it's your time to rise to the occasion. Get rid of map pools. They are not good for the game. They are not fun. They make the game more repetitive. They were bad in Overwatch, and they're bad in Rivals as well. Get them out. 3 strikes, they're done. Overwatch is going to take the cake in terms of maps, map voting, as well as the map reworks that they've done over time have all been very, very good, very, very fun, and they've made maps that were big pain points for many players way more accessible. Things like Havana is way less bad to play now than it used to be back in the day, and they've made some big improvements to other maps like Dorado, Numbani. Go down the list of things that they've actually made better. Still not a big fan of the Flashpoint maps. I like Cervasa. I don't really like Altus or whatever that new map is. And I don't really like New Junk City with that rework either. Not a big fan of those maps. But hey, you know, beggars can't be choosers, right? Let's move to balance, right? Let's talk a little bit about game balance. Who's actually done a better job? Rivals is a much more volatile game. And to be honest, I don't think they've really balanced the game that well in the year that it's been out. Rivals needs more than just very, very small niche hero changes. They need to make some overall holistic changes to the game, particularly the ult cycles as well. Rivals I've described as the fighter game of hero shooters in that there's a lot of button mashing in Rivals. There's a lot of crazy over-the-top abilities. The neutral fight is way less open. Like, it's much harder when it comes to actually individual hero abilities to create plays, and particularly around the ult fights that are very, very sustain-oriented. Across the board, Marvel Rivals needs to nerf ult duration for both DPS ults that last for a long period of time, but particularly support ults. And the reason why I want to nerf the DPS ults is because if you nerf the support ults, you don't want support ults to just get bulldozed over and be so weak that they don't get value. However, they last too long. And I'm sorry, a 2-second nerf to Luna Snow is not enough. It is nowhere near enough. Those ults should not last for more than 6 or 7 seconds at the most. And I think that their big concern is that, oh, well, we want people to feel super like superheroes when they're playing the game. Okay, well, if support ults last for so long that nobody can make any plays, then nobody feels like a superhero. And I don't want to hear people say, oh, it's a skill issue. You can use Iron Man ult. You can use Hawkeye to shoot the cloak and dagger, all this stuff. It doesn't happen consistently, and Magneto can gatekeep every single one of those ults just by holding his ult. And as time has gone on, that's what you've been able to see. Every single ult in Marvel Rivals that has a duration of longer than 8 seconds should be nerfed down to 8 seconds, or maybe 6 at a maximum nerf to 6 seconds. I would trade a 12-second Iron Fist ult for a 9-second Iron Fist ult if Luna Snow went down to 8 seconds. I would trade all of those things because it then creates more opportunity in the neutral fight to go make plays. And this is something that a problem that Overwatch doesn't have, that Rivals has to do a better job of it because they are in open queue. And while I do prefer open queue as a format now, that doesn't mean that NetEase has actually gone in and made the hard changes to these characters that they needed, because Luna Snow is their favorite godchild. And I don't care what they say, guys. I don't want to hear, see, we do nerf her, when you give her another slap on the wrist, when you need to holistically change the gameplay flow and create way more neutral fights in the game. Because again, if it's just a giant ult fight 24/7, there's not a whole lot of room for playmaking if the ults are generally unkillable by about 80% of the cast. Can't create a kill through those ults and rely on damage boost combos to even have a chance, when even then a lot of those ults have counterplay and ability to be shut down, but the support ults are almost guaranteed value. I'm not saying to just outright nerf these supports. I'm saying to nerf everything in the game, because that would even allow the support players to make more plays by using their cooldowns correctly in neutral fights. Overwatch does not have this problem. for a variety of reasons. You could say, oh, well, Sam, roll lock. No, it's really the fact that the ult duration is significantly lower. Like, ults are kiteable. You can re-engage into the ults. You can simply back up and re-engage if they're used in a bad spot. But the support ults and rivals last for so long that the disengage doesn't work. There is no real window to disengage because the ults last for so long. You kite so far back that you're out of the fight altogether. They can just drive you out of a fight by using a support ult, and there's no real window to get back in ever. Zenyatta ult lasts for 6 seconds. Kitsune lasts for like what, 6 to 8 seconds? I mean, there's no ult in Overwatch, especially a support ult, that lasts for more than 10 seconds or even close to 10 seconds. And that's a good thing. Rivals need to take a page out of Overwatch's book and do a better job of actually balancing those heroes. Now, when it comes to hero releases, though, I will say, I still kind of want to give the edge to Rivals. Mostly because I have not enjoyed playing against Hazard. I think Wu Yang, though, really did not jump off the page. However, when you see that character in game, guys, he is insane. They have not added a support that can do that much damage ever, man. And they invented a whole new style of aiming to the character, which is so cool. So cool. It really surprised me. I did not expect it to be as cool as it was, and yet it actually was. So I'm not really sure where to go on this. I thought Blade was underwhelming. He wasn't that good. Torch was really cool. Emma Frost was insane. Angela, I think there's still some time to see what she can do, but I'm very, very excited for Daredevil. I think he's going to be freaking sweet. So I guess we'll call it a tie on the hero releases. Although Rivals does have a higher volume of fun characters that they're adding, and I think the Rivals season duration is a little bit more fun as well now that they've made it shorter. But let's talk about the competitive mode now. Let's talk about the comp system. It's no surprise that Overwatch's competitive system is much better. NetEase definitely has some growing pains to go through when it comes to designing their competitive system. A game without placement matches that was clearly designed by, a company that's mainly focused in mobile games rather than actual competitive games. They have to overhaul the competitive system and add in some kind of placements, which they have said they're going to do. But I think Overwatch's new competitive system, especially the new system they've added for hero progression and hero SR, is a cool little feature that they've actually put in the game. I know some people say, oh, well, it's stupid. I think it's cool. It doesn't hurt anybody to have it there. Is it misleading some players to make them think, oh, well, maybe this new comp feature and new comp stuff is it's actually what I mean. Like, I'm champion on Echo, but I'm a 4200 peak player. I'm a champ player. Yeah, you're always going to get that. But when players actually think that stuff and they're incentivized to play, the game is better, whether they believe it or not. It makes people want to try, and that should be the goal of the system. It shouldn't baby players and miss. It doesn't even matter. It makes them want to play, and that is a good thing, not a bad thing, man. You should want people to want to play, and guess what? At the end of the day, if players are going to be good, they're always going to banter with each other for one. Two, make them go play in contenders or Face It or OWCS now. That's where those people can go play and really prove themselves. And guess what? It's all fine and dandy, man. It's not a big deal there. So I think that stuff is fine. I think that stuff is cool. We will leave it at that. So, okay, moving past that now, let's talk about, I guess, the game's format, because that is the elephant in the room. And while Overwatch has added 6v6, the queue times, at least for me, are kind of unsustainable because all of the pro players, like the top 100 players, unless you're on at a certain time of day, are all playing the main format of Overwatch, which is 5v5 roll lock. The players have always followed the pro format, and while the 6v6 mode did get more support and has maintained more players than any of the alternate modes Overwatch has ever done, Rivals still has the better format in 6v6 open queue. Here's how I like to frame this, okay? Rivals' abilities are more broken, the sustain is way stronger, the ults last way longer, and the ults in Overwatch are more fun to play against and allow for more playmaking. If all of those things are true, perks are better, right, in my opinion. If the engine for Overwatch is better, if all of those things are true, then why is anyone actually playing Rivals still? And the answer is that the gameplay loop of 6v6 open queue is way more fun, way more balanced than 5v5 roll lock. Super tanks are the last big piece of the puzzle that Overwatch actually has to solve to make it the king of its genre again. It's no coincidence that after going to 5v5 roll lock, that was the first time that any game ever took Overwatch's crown. And the analogy I would use is this. Overwatch was the Krusty Krab in the SpongeBob verse. It was the restaurant, the place to be. And NetEase was the chum bucket, man. Lower quality food in terms of game engine, mobile games, right, designed to go out en masse. And Plankton always wanted to be the Krusty Krab. Always. He always wanted it. Then Mr. Krabs decided, you know what? I'm going to make the Krusty Krab 2, and it's gonna have pizza instead of the Krabby Patty, and we're gonna leave the Krabby Patty behind, and we're gonna move on to pizza because it's the future. We're redefining what it is to be the Krusty Krab. We're gonna do this. And then Plankton said, okay, bet. I'm going to go take the original formula for the Krabby Patty. I'm going to make it at the Chum Bucket. And guess what? The Chum Bucket made Krabby Patties using the Krusty Krab's original recipe, while the Krusty Krab 2 is still there trying to make pizza work. And guess what? The Krusty Krab should just make the Krabby Patty, man. Marvel Rivals took Overwatch 1's formula and copied it brick for brick, ingredient by ingredient, and put it into a Marvel-based hero shooter with a significantly worse engine like UE5 and a significantly worse rank system. And guess what? It still became the most popular game out there. That's because there was something special about the formatting of Overwatch 1 in 6v6 open queue without having super tanks. And I would say the sustain and tank design and ability design in Rivals is not better than Overwatch. They're about the same, if not Overwatch is better. I will say, I think that Rivals does melee characters better than Overwatch, like Iron Fist and Magic and stuff like that are really cool outside of Black Panther, who's a big problem, right? But when it comes to tank design and support design, Overwatch is much better. It's much better. It really is better. I think Rivals is a better game for like fun to play, unique hero shooter, less FPS-y DPS that are melee oriented. I think that's what Rivals really has the edge on. And Doctor Strange teleporting and unique mechanics, like some of the support designs in Rivals are like really cool, like Loki I think is really, really cool. It's ironic that despite all of that, with all the overwhelming evidence that having giga tanks in the game that are significantly more powerful than everyone else on the map was just a colossal mistake. If Overwatch 6 sits down and really commits to the 6v6 format, I think that is the way it needs to go to really overtake Rivals and reclaim its throne, ironically using its own recipe. That's what's so funny about all this. This is the Krusty Krab.
No, this is Patrick.
Realizing, hey, we should make Krabby Patties. Like, that's literally what it is. Like, hey, the Chum Bucket restaurant that we always beat took our recipe and is doing better with our own recipe. Maybe we should stop making pizza and go back to making Krabby Patties. That's how I see this personally. And while I will say, I actually do think that 6v6 Overwatch, when it comes to the core game itself, I think is definitely better than Marvel Rivals right now. The format doesn't have the support of the company itself, and so therefore it's driven the community away from that format. They're not like intentionally trying to kill it. That's not what I'm saying, but like, the pro players and the mainstay of the Overwatch community are always going to follow whatever format is supported the most. That's just been what the case is. And I think the final thing holding them back is just getting rid of the super tanks, because that matchup is not fun. It's not a balanced matchup. And what makes Rivals fun is, despite all the sustain, even with all that way more aggressive sustain, you can still make plays against frontline characters as anyone else in the game, which is not the case in Overwatch, because the super tanks have so much sustain and damage. The way the gameplay loop functions around them is inferior to a 6v6 open queue format. And that really is what Rivals has the edge on. You know, if I'm NetEase, I'm licking my chops because, hey, listen, we stole their formula and popped off with it, but they still won't go back to it as their main format. So they'll take the win. Here's what I'll say holistically, though. What game is better, Sam? What game do you think is better at this point? I will say it's tough, right? I think Overwatch feels better to play because of the optimization, how the heroes feel in your hands. That is great. In the last 9 months to a year, Blizzard's made leaps and bounds, but I can't get past the gameplay loop. I can't do it. I think Rivals ultimately has a better gameplay loop, and that decision making, how the game flows at the end of the day. You can add all of the best systems in the world. You can add all of these cool abilities and things like Stadium to the game. You can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, if the matchup you're going against in the game itself is so lopsided that it destroys the gameplay loop and it really limits playmaking, a game where you can make plays on every character in the game is still more fun to me than a game where you can't. I will say, I think that 6v6 Overwatch is better than Marvel Rivals right now. But I think 5v5 Overwatch is still much worse, despite all the great systems and bans and all that stuff. The lopsided matchups are still there. The raid boss is still on the map. And because that raid boss is on the map, too much power is emphasized on one player, and that skews the dynamic of the entire game. And even if Rivals has all that insane sustain and all those crazy things, and triple support is still super, super good and viable in so many situations, there's still a lot of playmaking to be had, and the matchups still feel much more in your control, despite all of those flaws that Rivals still has to go and solve that they have not done the great job of doing. I still think that's better. Though I will say, honestly, guys, if 6v6 was the main format of Overwatch, it was the same format, and Overwatch decided to make their Krabby Patties at the Krusty Krab again, I would probably go with Overwatch right now, at least right now, because they upgraded their systems way better. The ult cycles are way more approachable, and I think 6v6 Open Queue has been a blast for me to play, and I really hope that Blizzard decides to go back to their roots and do what made them successful. There's something special about that format, about the Krusty Krab, man, about the Krabby Patty. Go back to making Krabby Patties, guys. Let's stop the cap. Let's make the game great. Like, it's silly. But either way, both games are fun to play right now. I've had a surprisingly amount of fun playing Overwatch, at least in 6v6. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. What game did you end up preferring and why? Where would you like to see the genre go next? I know that Aaron has said there's a big shakeup coming to the game next year. I'm curious what that's actually going to be. And I know Rivals has an absolutely insane release schedule planned as well while they're telling their story in the game, which is something that I really love about Marvel Rivals. It really feels like their events are actually inverse and progressing their story, which they're doing great on. Either way, I think both games are good. What do you enjoy and why? Let me know down below. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Much love. Peace